Well, the reality is, humans evolved in a very different environment than the one we live in today. Mm-hmm. We lived in an environment of scarcity. So most humans actually didn't live to reproduce. They didn't pass on their genes. They died from predation. They died from starvation. A few survived, our ancestors. Uh-huh. Our ancestors were the winners. Yeah. They got enough to eat. They didn't get eaten. They lived long enough to reproduce. Mm-hmm. And our bodies and our minds were perfectly designed for that environment of scarcity. So now, human beings being the innovative creatures we are, we change everything. We change the environment we live in dramatically. And now we don't live in that environment of scarcity. At least most of us don't. We live in an environment of abundance. And although we're perfectly designed for that environment of scarcity, this environment of abundance can trip us up, and it does. Mm-hmm. And it's responsible for the systematic overeating that people do that leads to the obesity, that leads to the metabolic syndrome, that leads to the vulnerability to infectious disease and the chronic degenerative diseases, the cardiovascular disease, and many of the cancers. And so that reality is why it's so difficult for people to adjust to the idea that they just can't eat as much of whatever they want and get away with it.
Yeah.
Like many of you, when I begin to understand not only just the why, but the details of intermittent fasting, it really begins to make sense to understand this historical perspective in terms of how human beings and Homo sapiens for potentially millions of years have been in a sort of fasting and feasting regimen towards their life. Unlike today in the modern era where we are primarily feasting nearly all the time. And believe me, I've been in that boat most of my life.
You're not going to get a cardiologist talking about not eating and fasting. So this is a little unusual, but this is breaking ground. Because we're always looking for new ways to treat old diseases. Treating diseases or illness, nature has to have built something in there. People got better. People got ill, people got better. Some people, of course, died. But there must be mechanisms built into the body that make you better. And what I'm trying to do here is to tap into nature to see if there's anything in fasting. First, I heard about it going through medical school. I said, fasting can't work. Fasting obviously does nothing. People didn't eat because they didn't have food. They fasted because the priest told them not to fast. They were fasting because they had 7 children and food for only 5. But the more I studied it, and looking at the biochemistry, being a scientist, I got to substantiate a lot of the things that I say. And if I'm going to look at the mechanisms, I can't just come up with them. I got to look at the biochemistry behind it. So with fasting, if we look back in history, we've been fasting all along. And Socrates was asked why he fasted. And he fasted for mental clarity. So do you get mental clarity when you fast? Well, he certainly did. And yet, the prevailing wisdom is that when you fast, I'm going to get sleepy, I'm going to get tired, I need energy. And there's energy bars, there's those little drinks, energy drinks. And when you drink that, you're supposed to get energy. And it's not true. When you go and take a candy or an energy bar, you suddenly feel great. That's because you're a junkie. You just got your high. You just took a shot that boosted your brain's dopamine levels, and you went to the reward center, and that's why you felt better, because you are a sugar junkie. That's why you felt good. Because biochemically, there's no parameter that is measured in that patient to say that, yep, he's lacking energy, and now he took the shot, whatever it was, whether it's those energy shots or an energy bar, and now he feels great. So something's changed. None. This has been shown in animals, in human beings. Clearly, there's no biochemical change going on, none whatsoever. It's all in here, it's mental. So what happens is that when you're a sugar junkie, whenever you eat sugar or simple carbohydrates and you get that high, it goes to the dopamine center in the brain, produces all that dopamine. It's the reward center, and you get addicted to it. And then you need it, and then you feel better when you take it. So when you are fasting also and you're feeling tired and fatigued, and there are reasons for that. But taking another shot of sugar or taking another candy is not the solution. It's nothing to do with that. It's the reward center. And eventually, after a few days, you will come out of that habit. Just like you take an alcoholic and stick him in a room and he can't drink anymore, after a few days, he won't crave anymore. It's your craving. It's your craving. So one thing is a biochemical craving. The second thing is your Pavlovian reflexes, where it's 12 o'clock, you got to go down to the doctor's lounge and you got to eat. Are you hungry? No, I'm not hungry, but I got to eat. It's time to eat. It's evening. I have to eat. I'm not hungry, but I have to eat. So a lot of our behavior is incongruent to our physiology. Our brain has interfered. Our mind has interfered with our body, and we stopped listening to our body. Why did we stop listening to the body? Because you were told to stop listening to your body. By who were you told? The press, the media, people around you, maybe your parents, maybe your friends, that you got to eat 5 times a day. 5 times a day. Maybe 6 times a day you got to eat. This knowledge is totally false. You don't have to eat 6 times a day. You don't need to have that calorie input all the time. This is not right. Oh, breakfast is the best and most important meal of the day. It's not. It's not. The most nutritious meal of the day is the meal that you have. That's it. End of story. But if you want to create a special breakfast meal, you're going to develop a cereal. And you're going to say, this is special breakfast food. Almost sounds like dog food, right? Create this food for the dogs. Now you got a special food for breakfast. You don't need a special breakfast food, especially one that's full of calories and sugar and is totally processed completely.
And the problem is, of course, that if you look at how people eat today compared to sort of 1970, it's very different. So in 1970, people ate 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. No snacks. Nobody ate snacks back then.
Now it's a snack culture, like snacking all day.
Exactly. And people say it's good for you. People say, oh, you should eat multiple times in the day, 6 times a day. It's good for you. But nobody in the history of humanity has done that before because we had work to do, right? It's not like your great grandparents, working in the factory, they're taking off every 2 hours to make themselves a little, ham sandwich or something, right? It was like, there's work to do. You eat when you have time.
That's how it was 2.5 million years ago. Who are you to try to change this in the last millisecond of your life, in your evolution? How many generations were before you? So in the 2.5 million years, there were 100,000 generations. And each generation improves on these genetic materials, So you got 100,000 generations. And then they produced the Homo sapien. How many generations were in the agricultural time? Only 600 generations. So 600 generations have been eating the benefits of the agricultural revolution. And what about the industrial revolution, which changed it even more? Because remember, much of the agricultural was okay, actually, because the grains were kind of whole. But in the industrial revolution, how many generations have gone by? Only 10. Only 10. You have no chance of survival. Because your genetic material hasn't had a chance to even change. There's only been 10 generations. So you drastically change the way you live, you drastically change your diet, and you expect 10 generations to drastically change your genetic material. Now, if you're lucky and you procreate wisely, then maybe another 1,000 generations from now, your kids will adapt to this new diet. But right now, you stand no chance. You see what I'm saying? Stay on this diet. Stay on this lifestyle. And after another 1,000, maybe 2,000, 3,000 generations, the new human being will have adapted to today's food. You won't stand a chance.
In the 70s, it's funny because I always say you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that was it. If you wanted an after-school snack, your mom said, no, you're going to ruin your dinner. And if you wanted a bedtime snack, she would have said, no, you should have ate more at dinner, right? And
right. You should have finished your meal.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the point. And nobody ate not a lot of desserts and all that. Nowadays, of course, when you look at the studies, people are eating 5, 6 times a day. You even look at schools. It's like, they're going to have breakfast. Then they're going to have a mid-morning snack. Then they're going to have lunch. Then they're going to have an after-school snack. Then they're going to eat dinner. And then if they play soccer, in between the halves of soccer, parents think that you need to feed them like cookies. It's like, okay, well, I played soccer growing up and nobody chased me around with a bunch of cookies. We had a great time, right?
Exactly.
We didn't need it, right? But that's 6 times a day, every single day. And it's ingrained into us. A few years ago when my son was going on a trip or something, the school said, well, you should pack him 2 snacks. I'm like, why? Why would you want to give him a bunch of snacks? Like, they're not good for you. But there's this idea now that it is good for you.
It wasn't until 13 months ago that I began this intermittent fasting journey, transforming my lifestyle. And this aspect of understanding the historical patterns and evolution of human beings and just animals in general, understanding that not eating all the time, we can still have energy, that our bodies actually produce energy, I think is such a powerful tool. And even as Jason Fung explains, even in the last 50 years, how things have changed since the 1970s, and how we've created this snack culture of eating all the time, 14.5 hours of eating. It's just insane.
So really, there have been a lot of myths about this. So first of all, I want to tell you that you are all very old, all of you, extremely old. And how old are you really? Well, you're about 2.5 million years old. That's pretty old. And about 12,000 years ago, you changed and you started going into agriculture. So until then, you were a Paleolithic being where you ate mostly meat, some vegetables that you found, and drank lots of water. And when you were a Paleolithic being, none of you were such fantastic hunters that you could hunt and eat and kill every 3 hours. So for all those years, millions of years, right? You generated a genetics. That genetics is what you still have now because it was evolved over 2.5 million years. So in the last 12,000 years, you became more intelligent and started agriculture. So now your food changed. So when you went to agriculture, did your genetics keep up with your 2.5 million years of genetic change? Hardly. Because it takes another 2.5 million years to develop a new genetic package. You did not change genetically as your diet changed, but you continued to be an agricultural society because the population grew and it was harder and harder. So agriculture was easier and easier. And then in the last 200 years, you change your diet again. Now you are industrialized. And now you start eating processed foods. Vegetable seed oils, totally processed. You need massive factories to produce vegetable seed oils. It is so processed. And yet now we consume that like it's going out of style. And yet that food, if you look at your entire evolution as 24 hours, that food only came to you in the last 10 milliseconds. How do you expect your body to respond genetically and hormonally to that food that you only just introduced to your genetics? So before you put anything new in your mouth, you got to decide that, is this in keeping with my genetics? This is very thought-provoking. Even agricultural products, it's very thought-provoking. Agricultural products are fine, but what did we do with them? In the year 1880, we invented the steel mill and we made the flour. And when we made flour, we changed the glycemic index of the food completely. Completely. So we've changed as we've moved along. So our diets have completely changed. The Paleolithic being ate maybe once a day. And he ate during the daytime, by the way. Because if he tried to eat at nighttime where the carcass is outside, the hyenas or some other animal will want to share that with you. Probably make you their meal as well. So at nighttime you have to crawl into your into your cave. You got to crawl into your cave and stay there. And don't come out to drink water either. But no, we take the bottled water with us to bed. So our body is made to fast and is made to feast. Because if there was no food around And if your sugar just went down, 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 your energy level went down, 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 you'll be dead in 24 hours because you're going to your cave and you'll just crawl in there and you're just going to get terrible because nature doesn't give you any way to come back. Oh, there's been no food for 24 hours. I'm just going to crawl here. I have no energy. I have no nothing. I'm just going to crawl and die. But no, that does not happen to you. Fasting doesn't kill people. And in fact, I asked you to fast all the time when I asked you to come for a stress test. Well, you don't come on the stress test and die. So we are used to fasting and we do it. And when you're sick, you fast, don't you? When you have the flu, you don't eat. When your pets are sick, they don't eat. You don't see your dog running and eating his food when he's sick. He stays in the corner and he does not eat. There's a wisdom in that. And that wisdom is the physiology. Because the physiology of the body is saying that, hey, look, eating is dangerous. Eating takes up a lot of energy. If you put in about 100 calories of food into your body, it takes about 60 to 70 calories of your body to digest that food, and then you get a little excess. So eating is an energy-consuming activity. But most of us don't think of it like that. You just think that all that eating is going to go right in and do me all that good. A lot of energy that goes into it.
So again, go back to the 70s and everybody says, oh, you can't fast, you can't fast. Well, they're eating breakfast, lunch, dinner. And if you were a naughty boy, you got sent to bed without dinner. So now you went from 12 o'clock to 8 a.m., 20 hours.
You look good the next day. You're looking clean. You got a six-pack. It's burning fat.
Exactly. And nobody died. Nothing bad happens, right? There was nothing wrong with that. And hopefully you learned your lesson too, right? And that's the whole point, is that there's nothing wrong. It's a natural part of our human physiology. If we couldn't survive without eating, we would not be here today. Because when we were cavemen and cavewomen, we didn't have food every day. Yeah, exactly. They couldn't. There might be a stretch of 3, 4, 5 days where there was no food, and therefore they had to survive on their own body fat, which they did. And that was the whole point. So let's let our body, use it, because that's the most natural thing to do.
One of the things I recently ran across was this great documentary about big cats and leopards in South America. And it was highlighting that this mother trying to support her 2 cubs, she was actually only able to get a kill once out of every 5 hunts. And then you see her working so hard to chase down, track, and kill this animal, and she's unsuccessful. And then imagine doing that 3 or 4 more times before you get a kill. That wouldn't make sense if the leopard is going to die not eating a meal every single day. It's probably not likely. So we as human beings, it's the same phenomenon. And I've learned that when I went through my own 7-day fast, not just my intermittent fasting journey. And so I find this aspect of understanding the paleo human being, the aspect of understanding how today in the modern society has influenced us to think that we need to eat all the time. And that I know that I lived that example, and that's why I was over 300 pounds before I began intermittent fasting. So I trust that you will enjoy learning additional details about why you may want to consider intermittent fasting or continue to do intermittent fasting to create not only health benefits in terms of autophagy, insulin resistance, but also understanding from an evolutionary standpoint how we as human beings are actually created to go into a semi-hunger state and then create a different form of energy through ketosis to really be able to fuel ourselves to get that next kill, to win that next hunt. And knowing that if we don't, we will not die. Because I doubt any of us or our ancestors were such great hunters that we just step out of the cave, see an animal, chuck a spear or throw a rock, get that kill, and know that we're gonna eat 1, 2, 5 times a day. Highly unlikely. Even if we're out gathering fruits, vegetables, nuts, berries, tubers, all the other stuff from a paleo lifestyle. Again, I want to thank the experts in helping provide some historical perspective in evolutionary biology towards understanding intermittent fasting and fasting in general, and how we in the modern day can adopt this as a potential health tool to improve our lives and help us to succeed in making progress in our goals. Thank you for watching Brian and Paul. My name is Brian. Continue to make progress in your life.